So first of all, I wanted to thank everyone for being here at our mock interview workshop. I think that it's good that I'm getting to introduce myself to the panelists, but I have LaTonya here co-hosting the event with me today, and she is from the AIA Practice Management Knowledge Community. So I wanted to thank you especially for helping me to put this event together. I know there was a lot of planning that went into it. So I wanted to ask if you wanted to just share a little bit about what the Pmkc does, just so that our students who are watching later can tune in and find out a little bit more about what you guys do there.
Yes, so our committee is the lead committee that oversees all of the Pmkc groups. And we're focused on leadership and strategies to advance project management. Our group wants to promote the value of project management and business, the business of architecture. And the group is a quite diverse group of professionals, much like this panel represented here. So we have some folks doing some really cool and innovative things in practice management, and certainly encourage everyone to go to the website and look at all of those resources.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so that was an awesome introduction, just a very short introduction into what the Pmkc does. But we also, worked with my committee, which is the AIAS Professional Development Advisory Group. So I just wanted to give a special shout out to all of the amazing advisory group members who also helped me to organize the event. Obviously, not everyone could make it today, but I wanted to make sure that I shouted everyone out. So we've got a great partner in the Pmkc, and we've got an even greater panelist of interviews or panel of interviewers today who will all get to grill me a little bit about questions that you could be asked in an interview. And I want to give each of them the chance to quickly introduce themselves. So we can start with Jacob, if you wanted to go first.
Sure. My name is Jacob Tsui. I'm a Los Angeles-based company. We specialize in project management and program management. We're a small business company, and yeah, my background has been in architecture. I graduated from the University of Miami with an architectural degree, and I practiced in architecture. So definitely architecture is close and dear to me, but now my business is mainly focused on owner's rep services.
Okay, great. So maybe Pam, if you wanted to go on and go next.
Sure. Hi, I'm Pam Touschner. I'm with DLR Group. I'm trained, like Jacob, as an architect. I actually lived and worked on the East Coast. And so coming to the West Coast, it was a new experience for me. I am currently the regional leader for DLR Group. So I'm responsible for 5 offices, a little over 200 people within the California market.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Ileana, would you like to go next?
Yes. Hi everyone. My name is Ileana Hogan. I am not an architect, but we do work as McCarthy building companies. We do work with a lot of architects. We do have architects in-house that act as integrated design managers. So they help through the process. I've been with McCarthy for 22 years, Vice President, Project Executive in Los Angeles area.
Great, thank you so much. Jay, do you want to give a little introduction?
Sure. My name is Jay Smith. I'm a principal and design director with Duda Paine Architects. We're a 50-person single practice firm in Durham, North Carolina. I am a licensed architect, and I'm on the AIA Triangle Regional Board here. I have been practicing architecture for about 22 years now. I went and got an undergraduate degree at a liberal arts institution studying a different profession, and came back to architecture school. I graduated from Virginia Tech with a master's degree in architecture, and been working as an architect ever since. And one of the roles I also serve, in addition to designing commercial and institutional buildings for our office, is I do all the recruiting, especially right out of school for our office. So I see a lot of portfolios and do a lot of interviews.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much. I'm really glad to have you all here. And I
There's
think now, oh,
one more. Is that Scott?
that's Scott Cornelius. So he's our
Oh,
national president
oh,
for AIAS. He
oh,
can
okay.
introduce himself if he'd like.
Yeah, I'd love to. Hi, everybody. My name is Scott Cornelius. I'm the national president of the AIAS for this year. It's great to see you all. I'm really excited to use this recording as a resource to get to our students who obviously always have lots of questions about the interview process and the process of getting a job in general. I'm actually in California right now visiting Cal Poly SLO, so I'm moving around a bit and we'll just be listening in today, but thank you all again for coming.
All right, now that we've made our way through introductions, I think it's probably time for me to get out of the introduction seat and into the hot seat. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys to go ahead and ask me questions. And I will preface this with, I'm not trying to give necessarily the perfect answers for you today, because we're trying to give this as a resource so that our students can hear your criticism and feedback of my answers so that they can use it moving forward. So with that being said, I am going to turn it over to you guys.
All right, so I'll mediate. Let's start with Jay.
Okay. Well, this is often a question I start with in my interviews, and that is, what time have you spent getting to know us as a firm, and what brought you to talk to us today?
And I think that is a great question. So first off, I should probably say my name since this is the first question of the interview, but my name is Gabriella Spatz. I go by Gabby, and I am currently studying for 2 master's degrees at Bowling Green State University. So something that really drew me to look at your firm was the focus on the combination of business and architecture and how those two come together. So I really am interested in the project management side of things, interested in how architectural processes work, and I really wanted to focus on that moving forward in my career. So I'm really excited to be speaking with you guys today about how architecture and business can work together in those ways. And then the other thing that drew me into your firm was that it was a little bit smaller, I think, than some other firms. So there's a greater opportunity to get chances to work on individual projects, to speak with clients directly, to get more experience in more of a generalist way than a specialist way, and to get exposed to more different types of architecture than I would at a larger firm. And I think those are the 2 main draws that I saw.
All right. Did you want to get the feedback after?
Yeah, I think we
okay.
could probably do feedback after each question just so that it's fresh in
All right.
everyone's mind.
What do you think?
Well, I thought you did really well. I know it's a hard question because it's really more of a specific question. But the purpose of the question is to understand if somebody's put time into looking at who we are as a firm. You said it well. We're not a large firm, so anybody we hire directly impacts our workflow. And you're right. We do look for people who generally want to practice and find out and explore and discover what they're after. It's good to have an idea, and it's good to have a reason why your idea of what you want, what you're really seeking professionally for your first experience might match with what we could provide you. It's a two-way street. We all want the students to be successful in their first job and have great mentorship and experience, but we also want to understand how they think they can contribute to us. So.
Could I also add to that? I think this is a good opportunity if you happen to know somebody else at the firm, or you saw that maybe as you did your research, one of the other principals went to the same university. You know, there is a little bit of that helps. It doesn't guarantee anything, but I think it just kind of helps to make more of a connection. Or
yeah, that's
Okay.
very good feedback. Thank you.
Awesome. Pam, would you like to go next?
Sure. So one of questions I usually ask in the process, I usually start by talking about the firm because I feel that puts the candidate a little bit at ease and allows you to kind of look around and just kind of collect your thoughts a little bit. But I usually ask something along the lines, I'm going to say 2 questions. Tell me a little bit about yourself. And what are your greatest strengths? So it might, depending on how we talk, I would ask for one or other of those questions. So I'll let you pick which one you want to talk to.
Okay, maybe I'll talk to a combination to benefit the students in that way. So I would usually start answering with, so you already know my name, but and I spoke about my master's degrees, but normally this question would come before the other one. So I'm going to answer as if it came before Jay's question. So I am Gabriella Spatz. I go by Gabby, but I am currently pursuing 2 master's degrees, a Master of Business Administration and a Master of Architecture at Bowling Green State University. I pursued both because I was interested in the overlap between architecture and business, and I wanted to further my experience in budget management, client management, marketing, and interaction in that way. So moving forward in my career, I'm very interested in that side of the architecture, is that practice management, professional management side. So moving on to strengths a little bit, I would say that my strengths are detail work. So I'm very good at understanding when things need to have a more detailed or more flowing process. So how can we streamline architecture? How can we streamline the client interactions? How can we make sure that everyone in the process is feeling valued and everything is efficient and managed well? And I think those are some things that I like to think about in all terms in whatever role that I'm looking for in architecture. And I'll stop there. I know that was not the perfect answer, but you can criticize it now.
Oh, it's good. And I think my follow-up would have been, can you give me an example of an opportunity where you were able to streamline the process or interaction? That's how I would have probably followed up to keep that conversation going. So I don't know if you want to answer that.
I'll give a short answer so that we can have time for the other questions, but I would probably talk about my time in AIAS and actually planning a conference. So that involved a lot of speakers, a lot of architects, a lot of people from different fields, and also a database of over 900 potential sponsors. So that required a lot of detail management and a lot of streamlining processes of email communications and interactions personally and professionally.
Great. I think when you can give an example, like a real life lesson in, then it just tells a little bit of more about you. The reason why I asked that, because I really want to, either one of those questions, I really want to understand you as a person, and are you going to fit into the culture of the firm? Because we can train skill sets, but if you're interested in just something that doesn't align with what the firm is about, or maybe what's culturally important to us. The other thing I'm looking for is a bunch of buzzwords that you just went and read the hot item or article, and then now you're going to use those. And so you didn't necessarily use there. You talked about efficiency and management and client interaction, but I didn't feel that they were necessarily like, you know, buzzwords versus saying, oh, I'm a hard worker. Okay, what does that mean? Just because you said it doesn't make you a hard worker. You have to kind of maybe explain an opportunity where maybe you went a little above and beyond to deliver.
All
Sound
right.
good?
All
Sounds
right.
good to me.
Does anyone else have any other feedback on that question? I know that's a very common interview question, so.
Okay, if not, Jacob, you're up.
Okay. Usually, I guess for me in interviews, after I ask, oh, you know, tell me a little bit about yourself. Someone coming out of college, I probably want to just really get to know them. So the questions I usually would want to know is, tell me about some of the things that you've done extracurricularly wise, or what type of other jobs have you had in the past before this job?
So I'm going to do 2 things. First is like the answer that I think you're going to get from a lot of people, which could be helpful. So I think a lot of people from AIS will talk about their AIS experience. So I would say if I were to answer just solely based on my AIS experience, I would want to talk about my time planning conferences, my time being treasurer for our local chapter, and then also my time being chair of the professional development advisory group and how those work together. But personally, I would answer this with, I have pursued several other jobs in marketing and event management. So I've been looking at, you know, how to better my skills of communication, advertising, client interaction, so that I can apply those then to architecture. One of the key things right now is social media management and getting the words out there in a way that people will respond to well and will actually listen to in a world inundated with information. So I think something that is a very important skill I learned in college was how to use those marketing themes, use marketing plans, use marketing, documents that detail colors, fonts, things for consistency's sake to get the architectural brand of a firm out there better. So I did that through work with the Honors College personally at BGSU. I'm currently working 2 positions this summer where I'm doing marketing for them as well. So I've gotten a range of experiences with public institutions, firms, and then small companies as well.
No, I know it's a tough question to ask, and the point of me asking the question is I want to see like of the roundabout of how you are. Like, do you not only architecture, but have you pursued jobs, summer internships? It could be unrelated, I sometimes look for people who've worked in the fast food industry, like honestly, someone who's worked at In-N-Out per se. In-N-Out's a California burger place, but wow, if you told me you've worked for In-N-Out for 2 summers in a row, wow, I know that you know how to process stuff quickly and you're moving on your feet and you really work hard. Sports might be a good, something to mention. Yeah, I've played in league sports. I grew up playing basketball or football or soccer. Those are great things to talk about in an interview too, because you know how to work in a team environment. So those are the kind of things that when I ask that question, when you talk about what you've done, it kind of tells me about a little bit about your personality, or it'll tell the firm about your personality and what you're capable of in group settings and work settings.
I think it's I was just going to go ahead, Ileana.
Oh, no, go ahead, Jay.
I was just going to say it's a great question because it tells us a couple of things. One, what other interests obviously does someone have, but it also tells us how they can tell a story that might relate to either architecture or what we do. And client engagement and communication is a critical aspect of everything that we do. And so asking these kinds of questions and seeing the response can tell us if this individual has a future, enabling them to ask questions to client or have other types of conversations with clients. And it even tells us sometimes if they have a sense of humor, which is important.
Okay, Ileana, go ahead.
Oh, I ditto everything else. I think you guys said it, but I think like Jacob said, talking about the extracurriculars to show that you have other interests and that you have diversity in what you're doing. A lot of the times when people are so focused in just one thing and they don't show the extracurriculars that they do, it shows that you can work with others, like Jacob was mentioning, and have diversity of thought and you bring all that into your work. So that's a really good question, Jacob.
Okay, with that, Ileana, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, so I want to ask you a tough question. I think some of the people that we end up asking this question, it's about conflict management. And so we all have gone through this. So this is not something even through school. You may be working on projects. And why don't you tell me about a time where you were in a group setting in which you were the lead and you had a conflict with one of your teammates, and how were you able to resolve it and what was the outcome?
So I'm going to take this a little differently from a work environment, more towards an extracurricular environment.
Yes.
So I was a lead on a committee for our local AIAS chapter, and we were working on an initiative to plan this large event. So it was a large scale welcome event for our first year class, and everyone had large ideas and they had big thoughts, and I was standing as the treasurer who manages the budget. And I had to be the one to not necessarily shut down, but guide us in a different direction. So one of my members was suggesting that we have a dunk tank and we dunk professors in it. This dunk tank would cost us $1,000, which would be a large chunk of our budget. And I had to sort of talk them down into more of a pie a professor in the face scenario, which was much cheaper, but still provided the same effect. So I think something that was important in that situation with conflict management was not downplaying anyone's ideas, still making sure everyone felt very valued, very heard, and talking through with them ways to accomplish the same effect at a lower budget scale. And I think that's something we all deal with a lot in today's economy, is not everyone has the money to do anything after recovering from COVID. So I think a lot of chapters are dealing with similar conflict management strategies at the time.
That was a great answer, Gabby. What we're looking for is for you to be able to resolve an issue without having to part ways, or people leaving, the project, or and having a compromise. We're looking for folks that are able to provide solutions. Maybe that doesn't work like you mentioned, but doing something at a lower budget to meet the expectations without downplaying, like you mentioned, the other person's idea. So I think you give a great response. Thank you. And above all, I just wanted to say, above all, when in the workplace, I think we're just dealing with personalities. And I think Pam was the one that mentioned, well, we can train you into, what we need to do. But if you cannot express yourself or work with others, that is really, where we're really looking for someone that can work with everybody and can, not necessarily get along, but be able to bring solutions to the table when there's conflict.
All right, so I have a question. So where do you see yourself in the next 10 years?
I'm going to start with an honest answer of, I don't know where I see myself in the next 10 years. So I have gotten this question a few times from other people. I think that in my graduate studies, I'm a little bit more set on what I wanted to do. In undergraduate, I can honestly say that I wasn't sure if I would move forward with architecture at all. So in the next 10 years, I hope to be working with a firm that aligns with my values. That is vague, I know, but in the world that we live in, it's hard to find people that aren't solely focused on the lowest budget item, on the lowest cost consideration, or the easiest solution. And I think I see myself with a firm that's being innovative, working on furthering sustainability initiatives, furthering different technologies that can revolutionize the way architecture and construction are practiced. And I see myself being a part of that, not necessarily on the innovation side, but more so on the process management side. So hopefully working with a firm that has an established, or that I could come in and establish a flow management system or process management system for the development of these new technologies. And that's sort of where I see myself in the next 10 years. But I know that's sort of vague.
Well, no, you'd be amazed at the kind of answers you get from this question. And what we're looking for when we ask a question like that is, are you thinking in terms of how you can add value to the firm? Or are you thinking solely of, your own personal aspirations? And if those two things don't mesh, we're looking to be able to have people for the long haul, and who understand that your personal ambitions, if they don't align with the firm's ambitions, that it's not going to be a good partnership. Does anyone else have any thoughts about that?
I would like to add that you don't ever say you don't know where you're going to be. To start with, always have a plan, always have an answer for that. That we, and I'm speaking for, McCarthy and what we're looking for. We want someone that has goals and aspirations. We want someone that, and please tie your answer to, if you were interviewing with McCarthy, tie your response to, you were talking about, you would like to work with a company that has certain elements that you would like to be part of. So tie that to the company, just say like, oh, like McCarthy has this process management, team. So once you make that connection, I know you want to work with us. So that makes you a better candidate. And so just make sure that, I think the second part of your answer was good, but just tying it into the company who you are interviewing with, that will make it even more plausible, because I know that you're just not thinking, oh, I'm going to work for a company X, Y, and Z, but you actually want to work for us.
I had that question asked to me once at an interview, and I was coming in as a consultant. So it was just for one assignment. And the person asked me, where do you want to be in 5 years? And I just was annoyed. It's like, I'm not going to be here in 5 years because that's not what you're hiring me for. And so my response, I wasn't prepared really probably for the question and annoyed by it. And my response was, well, I think in 5 years I could be doing your job. And so needless to say, I was doing his job in 3 years. And he was gone, and I stayed on. They realized how good I was, and in fact, I've been with this company now for 28 years. But so I just say that that benefited me, but that also could have gone. I could have been a little too flippant, and maybe it didn't go. So I think that you have to kind of that balance. If you know yourself, what your goals and things are, I think there's a way to turn that and tie it, like whether you're talking about with McCarthy, tie it to something that you know about in the company.
Yeah, I just want to add, I agree with that. Tying it directly to something that you know about the company. It's kind of why I asked the first question I asked. But I would just add, for us, we are looking for long-term employees. We don't hire for short-term benefit. And so when we ask a question like that, it's to gauge somebody's curiosity. Oftentimes, these are young candidates who have a lot to learn. And so if somebody answers in a way, it's fine to answer somewhat specifically, but if somebody answers too narrowly or comes off as if they know everything there is to know, that's a red flag for us. We want people who are curious and who want to learn and realize that there are so many things within the field that you have to know to become a good, competent architect, that there's an aspiration there, a hunger there to learn new things.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Jay. I always think about it. It's the difference between arrogance and confidence. And you want to have enough confidence, but also have enough and be humble enough to realize that you don't know everything.
Just a quick add, because I think how Pamela answered the question, I really loved it, but it's how you deliver it. To the point is like, hey, I would really like to have your job in 5 years. And so, maybe you have moved up and I want to be in your seat. And that still shows ambition. That still shows that you have a goal. So, like I said, I really like how she responded to that. And again, don't just say, oh, I want your job, kind of type thing in a malicious way. But it's just always put your own spin. We want to know how you are, how you, are going to be, your personality. You have to put that spin. It's not just your job. But I thought to me that would, like, I would start laughing and I'm like, yeah, that's the kid that I want. He wants my chair. I'm going to be on my toes. Mm-hmm.
I'd say this for me, when I hear this question, LaTonya, and it's asked very often in interviews through other firms, people doing the interview. What's your 5 to 10 year plan? It's something that is a little bit of a curveball in some ways, but it's asked often enough to where I think you would want to prepare your answer for one of these questions for sure. But you want to, I think something what Ileana said was that, like, you have to be prepared. As in an interview where we want to see the best. Saying that I don't know, but following it up, if you can say, I don't know, totally 100% fine. But following it up with, I don't know where I'm going to be in 10 years. 10 years seems to be a very long time, but in these first 5 years, I know I want to just work hard for a company. I want to learn as much as I can, and I want to grow. and my goal is to become an architect, you know, a very proficient architect. You know, you can narrow down the answer if you want to, but show engagement, show how you want this job, is the major thing. Yes, saying it like I don't know, and then leaning on, you know, your past experience of like maybe like master's programs are always difficult. You know, sometimes you question your career. I've changed careers in my line of work, you know, a couple times actually. It's okay to question what you want to do and where you want to go, but in an interview setting, you have to be narrowly focused.
All right. Does anyone want to, we have about 20 minutes. Does anyone want to ask another question? Or Gabby, do you have any questions for the group?
I was going to ask, I don't know if we want to take the full 20 minutes. I do want to make sure that people can watch this and, you know, watch it in a decent short-ish amount of time. So I think that maybe if you guys just wanted to share general tips, I know you didn't get to all of your questions that you were going to ask, but maybe if you wanted to share some of those other questions and how you might want an answer phrased to them, or even just some general tips for interviewing in the current market, I think that might be more beneficial than continuing to answer some of these questions, and then people can, you know, pick and choose which parts they want to watch.
Well, maybe I could start off. General tip, I think, is the first impression we always have with people who are seeking employment is a resume. So I would say within the resume, really focus on the company, who you're submitting your resume to, and research them a little bit. You know their strengths and weaknesses. Pull out some of the things that you like to see yourself become, you know, within that company, and then try to like put that on your resume in some of the functions maybe that you've done in the past that might align with, you know, with that company. So that first and foremost, I think is the catalyst to having an interview, number one. But number two, to really showcase yourself in the best way. I'd say that's probably the best advice I can give you as far as, you know, preparing yourself. And yeah, in an interview, I would always say smile, and just it's an interaction, it's a conversation. I think people get really nervous sometimes, but there's really nothing to lose. It's just a conversation between two people, and you're seeking employment, and the other person's they're actually trying to give you a job. You know, they actually need, you know, the company has an open requisition for a reason. You just have to fulfill that picture of what they want. They looked at you in a certain view from your resume, and you have to fulfill that and fill in the gaps for them to say, yes, I want to hire you. Personally, I think, you know, just through this conversation, you speak very well. You've invested into your field. You know, you're an AI, you've done a lot with AIA, and you've done 2 masters. I'd hire you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, Jacob. And I think the other thing is have someone else look at your resume, maybe even somebody that's outside of the field. It's amazing how many things are not spelled right, or you're inconsistent on how you do dates, and spaces are missing. And we're all going to make mistakes. We're not perfect, but when you constantly are looking at your resume all the time, or any document you work on all the time, you just don't see it anymore. You become blind to that. And I think that just shows that you're organized and that you care enough about yourself. I do think that here we're having a virtual conversation or interview. Sometimes they're in person, so you have to be prepared for both. And showing up on time is important. It doesn't matter which one it is, but showing up on time, and thinking about how you're gonna look. You know, you don't need to be in a suit. I know things have gotten really more casual, but I do think something that makes you look a little professional. So, not showing up in dirty sneakers. Jeans, I think nowadays in some firms are absolutely fine, but maybe having on a nice tailored shirt or ironed shirt. I'm amazed at how many people kind of show up dirty sneakers and an unironed shirt. And I learned early on in my career that if I looked good while I was in the office, every once in a while there was an extra ticket for a lunch event, or they needed somebody else to go maybe to a client meeting to maybe help with setting up a model or taking notes or helping do the PowerPoint, whatever it was. And if I looked appropriate and professional, then I would be asked to go. So I always had an extra suit jacket. I always thought through those things. So I think you have to think about being prepared for the unknown so that you might receive a good opportunity. I made another note to myself. I recently just watched a TED Talk. It was Silver Spoon versus Scrapper, and it talks about an individual who, do you hire the person who went to all the right schools, had all the right opportunities, and of course succeeded, versus maybe the scrapper that started with a community college, worked during school, maybe doesn't have the Ivy League title or a degree, but clearly has the skill set. And it's meant for us. It's really geared towards us as hiring. Don't get fooled by the pretty stuff in front of you. Really look at the candidate. But I think in this terms, it might be good as candidates to look at that. And I think it might help you realize the things that we maybe take for granted that we don't put on a resume. If somebody, you talked about sports being a team player, I know they had to work within a team if they've been on team sports. But if someone's also been a Boy Scout and they have, oh, come on, now I've lost it. The highest rank in Boy Scouts. My son is one. I've brain dead on
Eagle
it now.
Scout.
Eagle Scouts.
If they're an Eagle Scout, I know that they have a lot of experience in different things and that they have the discipline to follow through on something. So that in itself is like, oh, okay, that's a little kind of added check for me. And I think often, as Jacob said, the position is open. We're looking for somebody, and there's so many, in some cases, there's a lot of candidates. And so it is the little things that do make the difference and might set you apart from another candidate.
I would say practice. Be prepared. A lot of the times people show up, that we were talking about, be prepared, know the company that you're gonna interview, do your research. That's part of your preparation. Part of the practice is for you to have a mock interview with someone else. Have them truly interview and grill you so you can get the jitters out. I mean, and some of those common questions that we asked today, they're going to be asked during the interview. So have a response to them. Go to the websites and find out more questions that you are typical, and have answers for those questions and practice. One of the things that I do before going into an interview with a client, which would have completely applied, is always take a deep breath and do your power pose. I don't know if you guys, like the Wonder Woman pose, because that gives you the confidence. And I mean, taking that deep breath right before you go to, go to the restroom, whatever, and take your pose and really do it. Take a deep breath and then go in and have a conversation. I think Jacob said it. This is a conversation. And what you need to understand is that even though you are interviewing, for a position, you are also interviewing them. So be prepared and have questions, because it's not all the questions that I ask all the time. I want to know that they ask me good questions in return about the company. It's okay, so what do you want to know? And we start at that, after I ask my questions, and then they don't have questions for me, I'm kind of like deflated, at that point, because I know that, well, they don't want to know anything else. They have to have something. Do you want to know about our employee stock? Do you want to know about benefits that we didn't talk about? What do you want to know? So to me, that's important that you prepare to interview us in the same way that we are interviewing you. So prepare.
I had three things that I wanted to mention here, and Ileana, you hit two of them. So that's great. I was just going to reiterate, you know, I do career fairs all the time. Some of them have 20, 40, 60 different firms. All firms are different, right? Even if they have the common goal of creating architecture, they're all very different. So I encourage everybody to go and see and talk to as many people as you can. That will help you develop these kinds of questions that we're talking about. And even better, if you have a chance to go see somebody in their office, that's the best way, because then you can see how they work, you can see how they describe how they work, and see if those two things fit. So that was the first thing. The second thing, Jacob mentioned a resume. For us, a resume is important, but the portfolio is essential. We want to see the work. And so there's two things really key that we look for in a portfolio. One is the absolute best work that you can put into the portfolio, which shows some judgment, because typically there's work behind it. But also, we do want to see and understand how you arrived at a solution. So some simple way to show your process. Design is a creative nonlinear act. And so seeing and understanding how you think about something in order to make a decision or a judgment about what the solution is really critical. And the portfolio is truly the way that we make that evaluation. And then the third thing, Ileana, you hit on it, questions. Ask me a question. What question do you have for me, either about the work, about architecture, about our office, whatever it is, that is really important not to not have a question. Everybody who shows curiosity has got to have something on their mind and something they're ready to ask.
A quick question that I would suggest most people, if they don't have anything else to ask, is ask the interviewer how they got to where they are at. You know, how did you get to your position? How did you, manage to be a VP? How did you manage to be the president or running your company? So, I mean, that's an easy, quick, question that can be asked at the end. So at least to have something to, come back to and start the conversation. That also touches a lot to our egos, right? They want to know about us. So, but it is important, and in who doesn't like to talk about themselves a little bit. So that's always a good question to kind of start with.
I have one that I like to ask, and just following up on what Ileana is talking about, I asked that person, what do they like about working at this firm? So keeping in mind that, yes, it's a two-way exchange. You're interviewing them as well. Another question that I often ask, and sometimes this actually puts the interviewer on the spot, but it's an important question to know, is why is the position vacant? So, I've gotten some very interesting answers to that question as well. And sometimes, it's just like a pause. And so, reading that body language, and I think that's also important too. We've talked about, I like what Ileana said about having the superpose, but being composed, body language. I did a video interview, and I don't know, for some reason I was very jittery. And so the feedback that I got, not exactly directly to me, but to the colleague that referred me, and it's like, well, she was moving around a lot. So I don't tend to do that in person, but I think that was my first video interview. So just being mindful of your body language, being, relaxed, and just being aware of what you're communicating through nonverbal as well as verbal.
And there are different power poses. Like I know I do the Wonder Woman one in my,
I like that
in
one.
my place, but you can also, even just stretching. One of the things that I have read is like when you occupy space. So the more you occupy space and just stretch your arms, I mean, that still is making you big. And it does reflect in how we feel, smile. I think Jacob or somebody else, mentioned it, a smile throughout, that kind of gets you going. So it's very important. And I think, Gabby, the way you presented yourself, that was really well. You were smiling, you were, being attentive. So that was a great way of doing it.
Yeah, thank you. I've actually gotten feedback before that I'm too, like, I nod too much because I like to acknowledge people. And so like I did an interview a couple years back and it was one of my first interviews for a position, but I would say they were saying like, well, you gesture a lot and you nod a lot and we want you to acknowledge us, but you might have acknowledged us too much. And I was just like,
Interesting.
okay. So I don't know if that's something that's across the board, but I do know some other things just generally that like you guys didn't necessarily talk about is that gestural language of video versus in person. So making sure that you're open to people is something that I've seen. So a lot of people like to cross like their legs or their hands or some part of their body, and that just makes it seem like you're closed off, like you're not ready for the interview or you're not open to what the other person has to say. So I just wanted to throw that in there as a general tip is just try to make sure that you're open, even if you're not a smiley person. I have some friends who literally don't smile unless something makes them laugh. Just think about it a little bit beforehand of, what your face looks like, and that might be where it's helpful to do sort of that mock interview with a friend or with a parent or a trusted colleague, whether in the field or not. And sometimes it is better to get outside the field and see what they see in your resume, your portfolio, and like your interview stance. I've used that tactic a lot, and it does call attention to some things that people in the field of architecture and the field of business are generally used to that other people might not be. So that's my 2 cents, but but yeah, I do feel like it was a little bit interesting today because normally I would have been interviewing for one company. So I do want to point that out, that my answers today were a little bit more generalized. So just to any students watching this, yes, you are allowed to get more specific. You are expected to get more specific when you're interviewing with a specific company. You want to know about them, you want to talk about them, and you want to talk to what they believe in and what they're doing so that you can try and get that job. So that is
As far as
something
one last thing, as far as housekeeping is concerned, as far as when the interview ends, it's always good to try to get their business card or email address, follow up with an email, say thank you for the interview. It goes a long way to show that, hey, if it didn't even work out, just thank you for the time. We are in a very small industry, and we are always looking for people to grow, and opportunities always come up, and that one interview might trigger you for a job 2 years down the line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. In fact, one of the things we typically do at the end of our interviews is ask them, if you're interested, if you liked what you heard today, follow up with this specific person. They may want to follow up with us or, whoever's interviewing, but, I have a human resources person that I work with all the time that they are expected to follow up with if they're interested. And if they don't, it's a sign. So.
I agree with that. I think a very perfectly good question is, when should I expect to hear from you? When should I expect, or what are the next steps? How can we move forward? And I like to be open and just, hey, I'm ready. When should I expect a call from you? And that also shows a little bit of enthusiasm. So then they'll give you the steps from there on.
Yeah, good point. And I think if you really want to distinguish yourself on that thank you note, a handwritten thank you note is a good idea. Everyone emails and texts and all that kind of stuff like that. And so again, it depends on the firm, but I definitely would, keep that as an option, something to think about. And the one last thing that I'd like to say, just following up on what Pam talked about, is showing that you are well-groomed, and for guys, it's making sure your shoes are shined and that kind of thing. Even though it is business casual, our profession, we're very visible. We're an artistic profession, and that kind of thing matters. That's the first impression that you're making. So whatever that looks like for you in terms of grooming, to make sure that you've done that and that you're prepared to make that good first impression.
Yeah, that's a perfect way, I think, to close us out. But I want to thank you all for being here, and thank you, LaTonya, for working with me on this. It was wonderful to work through this process. I can't believe we're already through the event.
Yes, yes. And I'd like to thank all of our guests today. I really appreciate your time, and most of them I know personally, and so thank you.
Yes, we greatly appreciate your time. And like Scott said earlier, this resource will live on for a long time, and hopefully our students can get a lot out of it. I know I even did, and I'm not looking for a job right now. But I appreciate you guys taking the time to grill me and let it live on as a recorded resource for our AIS members.
All right.
Awesome.
Well, you're
Thank you
welcome.
so
Good luck,
much.
everyone.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.